Heard on Thursdays with Nikki is about to go live online. Catch HOT, the iconic radio show that made Philippine FM radio talk, every Thursday on the Monster.
Streaming video on the Monster Facebook page at RX931, the Monster YouTube channel at RX931, and twitch.tv/Monster RX931.
You heard on Thursdays host, Nikki Porter. Stand by and enjoy the program.
Hey, what's up, monsters? It's Nikki Porter here for more Heard on Thursdays, the late night show that made Philippine FM radio talk. Now, let's just be straightforward right at the start and say that while it might be a goal for most of us to be in a relationship, it's pretty difficult to stay in one. Now, as of late, I've been seeing a lot of content about conflict resolution in relationships, and 100% of it, or most of it actually, relies on open communication with your partner, which also isn't easy. But if you want to create a deeper, more intimate relationship with your partner, it's necessary in order to make it work. Now, it should be noted that open communication, telling your partner about yourself, can only go so far as how well you know yourself too. And personally, I want relationships to thrive, for partners to love, care, and respect each other better, which brings us to our guest this evening. So our Heard on Thursdays guest tonight is LISSY PUNO. She is a counseling psychologist based in Singapore, and she's Filipino bred, and her career in promoting psychological health and emotional wellness has led her to co-found the International Counselling and Psychology Center in Singapore. She's also a certified presenter of the Getting the Love You Want Couples Workshop, which is currently in its 30th year, and the Connected Parents Thriving Kids Workshop, and also written a few books, namely Affairs Don't Just Happen, Protect, Repair, and Recover, an interactive journal called Stay Connected, and a guide for partner selection called Couple Goals. LISSY is an Ateneo de Manila University psychology grad, a master's degree in counseling psychology from Lesley University in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and a clinical fellow in Harvard University. She is currently listed in the Keynote Women Speakers Asia, the world's leading directory of female public speakers. So tonight, let's nurture better relationships and just have the best time being with our favorite persons long term. Heard on Thursdays, please welcome counseling psychologist, author, and certified Imago relationship therapist, LISSY PUNO. Hello.
Hi, Nikki. Wow, thanks for that warm welcome. I am so excited to be in your show. I love the energy, and I just love what I heard about, what you're hoping for both of us to do in this show tonight. I think you got it right. How to think of our relationships long term is an option for everyone. And if you are tired of hearing, let's break up, I hope we can share a lot of tips tonight to all your listeners on how to get the love that they want going.
Yeah, definitely. Like I am in that wagon, in wanting to find a long-term relationship and have someone to work with me, diba?
Yeah, exactly. And I'm thinking that, in our conversation tonight, we can sort of touch all those areas that you've mentioned for everyone who is really wanting to make a go of the relationship that they're in, or if they are in the process of developing a new relationship, then a good foundation is always really essential.
Yeah, definitely. So thank you very much, LISSY, for joining me on Heard on Thursdays. Before anything else, though, I do want to ask, well, the monsters might have an idea on what a counseling psychologist is. What naman is an Imago relationship therapist?
Right. So, what's interesting for me is midway to my career, I realized that couple relationships, they are so essential because it is the foundation of marriages, of parenting, and family life. And so when I was in search of a really good couples therapy kind of model, I came across Imago therapy, which is a US based type of couples therapy founded by the couple partner psychologist named Harville Hendricks and Helen Hunt. And what really was interesting for me about this kind of therapy is the founders really walk the talk. They were about to get a divorce for their marriage, and they just suddenly stopped and thought, hold on, why don't we find a way to keep this marriage? Make it work.
Yeah.
Find a way for our relationship to stay grounded. And they are now in their late 80s and continue married, continue to practice imago therapy, and we are following in their footsteps. And we hope that we can bring imago therapy to many couples out there. Now, you might be wondering about the word imago, right?
Yeah. Right.
Imago is the Greek word for image. And the reason why they chose this word is because we have a lot of images from our childhood that we bring into our relationships.
Yeah.
And it can either keep it loving or bring it to an end. And so those images in our minds are so essential when we look for a partner, when we are in relationship, and how we handle our relationships is made up of many images from our child, our upbringing, our families. And so it's really important to understand them in order to keep our relationships growing.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And hopefully tonight the monsters will also understand that it's not like there's nothing necessarily wrong with you with the way that you react to things. Sometimes it's a reflection or you're brought back to an experience before in your childhood, and that's why you're feeling triggered. And we'll get into that later on in the show. Well, so it also says in your bio that you help promote emotional wellness. So could you expound a little more on that?
Right. So, my approach to counseling and therapy is from a strengths based approach, meaning we all have that potential to take care and maintain our mental health. If we understand that our mental health is just like our physical health and it needs regular maintenance, we can stay healthy, we can stay emotionally well. When we think about post-pandemic, when there is a significant amount of stressors that really induce emotional tension, which is not good for our bodies, our minds, our hearts, and everything about us, then we realize that, wow, we need to get back to emotional wellness. And that just means bringing our thoughts, our emotions, our actions into a healthy space. Because we were filled with anxiety in the pandemic because of uncertainties, unknowns, and all the things that surprised us, the unexpected. We are so vulnerable right now to our emotional and mental health being a little bit weaker, a little bit challenged, a little bit troubled and distressed. And so hope today your listeners can really realize that mental health is so essential, nothing to be ashamed about. And if we aspire for emotional wellness, it is again an option for everyone to stay healthy.
Absolutely. The pandemic really blindsided us in terms of like really heightening our anxiety because we don't know what's going to happen next. Not even like, like our leaders knew what was going to happen next, or like the health department didn't really know. So there we were really stuck. And so that was it was traumatizing for a lot of people. So for us to kind of move past that now, it's kind of facing it now and kind of dealing with it now that the worst is over, and so that we can just process everything that transpired during that pandemic. Sure.
Right. I mean, I just want to add that before the pandemic, depression was one of the leading mental health disorders around the world. And now anxiety disorders have taken over.
Oh no.
And globally, anxiety disorders have doubled, tripled, quadrupled, and it is really a growing concern. So, although there is healthy anxiety, to all your monsters, if you're experiencing unhealthy anxiety, please get help. Help is available for everyone.
Yeah, and there's nothing to be ashamed of to admit that you actually need help.
Right. And yeah, just to remember, anxiety is a normal built in reaction from our brains. Actually, anxiety is what keeps us safe when there is a threat or a danger, right?
Yeah.
It's just that, of course, when the levels are so high, like the pandemic, because it is totally something we were unprepared of, unprepared for, then of course, anxiety reactions will also be heightened. So just watch out for it.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And so now we'll talk a bit now about your profession as a counseling psychologist, a relationship therapist, and at like just to set the tone, sort of, would you happen to know the current state of of marriages at the moment? Is there a recent study that just came out? Like for a time, it was like 60% of marriages ended in divorce. Is that still true, or is there a different number this time?
Well, definitely the numbers are much higher this time. I can share with you that the pandemic lockdown, right? Or the COVID lockdown,
Yeah.
when you are confined in a space where you are unable to leave and you are faced with a partner, there were so many things that they discovered, right?
Yeah.
Empty relationships, loveless relationships, disconnected relationships, sexless marriages,
Mhm.
and a lot more, right? Um, and they realized that their marriages were ending, the marriages were empty. And I can tell you now, although the statistic is not in my head, but
Mhm.
on the first day, the Wuhan province in China lifted, the government office in charge of divorce must have had, I don't want to quote a number if I'm not certain, but by the hundreds. Okay. So the
Wow.
day that the lockdown opened up in the Wuhan province in China, a significant number of couples marched down to the office of maybe the marriage registry and filed for divorce. And
Wow.
so the numbers are quite high.
Mhm.
And so marriages, relationships, dating relationships are very much challenged. That I can say.
Mhm.
So we want to be mindful. When I wrote my book, Affairs Don't Just Happen, in 2016, the
Mhm.
statistics for relationships that will be challenged by affairs was only 86%.
Wow.
So that
Gosh.
is quite a high number.
Mhm.
And relationships are very vulnerable right now to infidelity or cheating or whatever you might want to call it. No,
Mhm.
so we want to be very, very mindful of the state of our relationships. Maybe during the lockdown, couples were locked down with their abusers. Couples were locked down with their betrayers.
Mhm.
Couples were locked down with the people they disliked the most. They didn't have the distractions of everyday life because we were locked down with one another, right? And so we need to be supportive of couples moving forward. And that's why I'm glad that you are choosing to discuss this topic tonight, because
Mhm.
I want couples to have hope that if they discovered during the pandemic that their relationships were empty, ending, loveless, disconnected, there is hope for repair, right?
Yeah.
Repair, recover, and reconnect. So just those keywords. So yeah, please try that out.
Yeah, definitely. And so it's nice. Okay, I know how monsters are probably thinking right now with how you were saying, there were loveless, sexless relationships during, or like marriages even during the pandemic. It's not necessarily to set a sad tone for tonight's show. It is like what Lissy said, to, have a message of hope. There is a silver lining to this. And
Definitely.
yeah, so it's not
Yeah.
necessarily the end of the world or the end of the line for a relationship. It can still work, but it will take some work as well from both partners.
Exactly, exactly. In fact, all my books are about repairing, recovering, maintaining, and definitely that is the message that we have today, from emotional wellness to
Hmm.
relationship wellness. You
Yeah.
know, keep your relationships healthy, loving, connected. That is the message of our show tonight.
Hmm. Yes, absolutely. And so I hope you monsters can take some notes while you can, if you guys are listening or watching us on Facebook, on YouTube, or on Twitch. So, would you be able to identify what would be the main underlying reason why relationships end, and like, is it also a recurring theme when it comes to you counseling your patients or your couples?
Nikki, so talking about hope, right? I'm sorry, I'm going to do a quick switch of my book because we want your monsters to have hope. And that comes from this book called Stay Connected. So I'm going to take down this book affairs, I think,
Yes.
to just go with the theme and put a little bit on how they can actually stay
Perfect.
connected.
This is like first chapter,
Perfect.
stay connected, and the next part we'll change it again when we're talking about affairs.
Later, we'll change it again to couple goals naman.
Yeah.
Okay. So your question is, what usually contributes to the end of a relationship? Did I get that right?
Correct.
Yeah. Of course, the answer to that question will depend on where the couple is at in their relationship. I know that your listeners might be in a dating relationship,
Hmm.
right? Some of your listeners might be in a casual dating committed relationship, or some of them might be in an exclusive committed dating relationship,
So many
or
labels.
they, exactly, or they might be in a long-term
Hmm.
committed relationship considering marriage, or they might be married.
Hmm.
So, whatever state of relationship you're in, the ingredients are still the same, right? So,
Hmm.
let me talk a little bit about relationship in the romantic love stage,
Hmm.
right? Where you are consumed with attraction, passion, infatuation, you're falling in love,
Hmm.
right? So, when that happens, everything just feels good, like we have known each other so well, we can finish our sentences, you seem so comfortable to be in my life, and all those good things, right?
Hmm.
Now that stage is the first stage of a relationship, but that stage will not last.
Yeah.
Soon we shift to the next stage, which unfortunately called is the disillusionment stage,
Hmm.
right? And every couple will go through the disillusionment stage because once you feel comfortable with each other, you start revealing the true, authentic self.
Hmm. Right.
And people will change, people will not be as romantic, as courteous, as, as a gentleman, as a gentlewoman, and so on. And during the disillusionment stage, this is when we say, ayoko na, no?
Yeah.
Bago ka, Or this is the stage where we say, oh, I don't like what I'm seeing. This is not who I fell in love with, so I'm going to end it. They don't realize that there's a third stage, right? And the third stage, which is called the authentic love stage, is where the good stuff should actually be formed. But unfortunately, relationships take hard work. And if we are willing to do the work, it stays romantic, it stays loving, it stays caring, it stays committed. But we must be willing to do the hard work, right?
Yeah.
So that's just a situationer for couples to understand. Most of the breakups will happen during the disillusionment stage, but I hope that you can hold on, ride the wave, ride the tide towards authentic love and build on the ingredients that is necessary to keep the love going. So I'll give you a few things that might lead to a breakup, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of course, the first one is mistrust or difficult trusting, because the big umbrella of breakups come from this situation. When people feel unsafe in a relationship, they don't want to be in it. They're afraid. They want to flee. So the question for you and your listeners is, what makes you feel unsafe? And most of the time, this will lead to the breakup. So a lack of communication, mistrust, a lack of affection, extreme criticism, extreme put downs, not sharing values, not wanting the same thing in life, not bringing out the best in each other, conflict, arguments, frustration, annoyances. The list can go on, Nikki, until your show ends, because each of us will have a different definition of what makes us feel unsafe.
True.
So we need to understand that about each other.
Definitely. And it's so, I love how you broke it down into three different stages as well. Because as much as I would have liked, what's the underlying reason talaga, it depends on where you are. And the disillusionment stage, definitely, I've been there like a few times, I guess, in my life. And so, it's really, it's not, but then again, it's not just me who can push the relationship forward. It has to be the other person who wants to work with you to make that happen. So hopefully with the monsters listening, it's a two-way street to make a relationship work. It can't just be one person.
Right, right. And it's a two-way street. And the question is, are you going the same direction?
Yeah.
Right? Are you in a path that allows you to sort of like be connected in a shared way, right? Because there won't be a relationship if you're not relating.
Yeah.
So if you are just walking a parallel street, or if you're just walking side by side, but you're not connecting or relating, then it's not a relationship. And so we really need to tackle what is necessary in a relationship. What does it really entail to keep a good relationship going?
Yes. And now you mentioned also that one of the reasons why people want out of a relationship is because they feel unsafe. And maybe because, they have boundaries that have been disrespected, or they're not, the partner's not honoring it, or sometimes even boundaries that haven't been addressed at all. So there is like that level of unsafe feeling. So what could you explain to us to us, like, where that feeling of being unsafe usually stems from?
Well, there's so many things that could make us feel unsafe, only because our upbringing has contributed an image of unsafety. And so each of us will have a different sort of like definition of unsafety. But, let's stay with the most common, right? First of all, physical unsafety, we're not even going to discuss that tonight because that is a non-negotiable, right? Physical unsafety. So I'd like to focus more on emotional unsafety, right? And so, maybe tonight we can quote the another famous research psychologist that's actually the competitor of Imago. But I can say that it is as good, right? So Dr. John Gottman
Mhm.
talks really about the good relationship. And he identifies 4 areas where you can feel unsafe. Yeah.
Mhm.
The first one is silent treatment, or what he calls stonewalling,
Mhm.
right? The second one is extreme or excessive defensiveness. Like if you're just constantly defending, then you feel unsafe if
Mhm.
your world is not validated.
Right.
The second one, where am I? The third one is contempt. You
Mhm.
know, contempt is, it's just a feeling of disgust. Or I'm trying to think of the Tagalog word for contempt, pero it's worse than kainisan, it's more than kainisan, no? And then, of course, the fourth one is extreme criticism, put downs, belittling,
Mm.
na lahat na lang ng ginagawa mo mali, no?
Mm.
At kung sino ka man as a person is hindi tama. So we outline, and I can tell you the list goes on, but I think in a more focused way. What are the common things that most people find unsafe, which John Gottman predicts will bring you to a breakup? Criticism, put downs, and belittling, defensiveness,
Mhm.
contempt, and the silent treatment. Can you imagine couples that are supposed to be in a loving relationship but are not talking to one another for days, for weeks, for months, for years,
Yeah.
right? I mean, that is just so unsafe.
Yeah. And it's heartbreaking too because this is someone that you promise to live a life with, like long term, but then you're living it separately. It's very, it makes you feel unsafe, and it also makes it becomes a lonely kind of partnership.
Exactly, exactly. When you promise one another to love one another, to care for each other, to bring out the best in one another, and to accomplish what you would like in life, and you're not doing that, you might really want to think that this relationship needs help. So if
Mhm.
your listeners are looking for a guide, that could be a good guide.
Yeah. And so thank you for answering that question. And so I also, you mentioned, there's also the aspect of like upbringing as children. So some of us, like, we unknowingly, we sometimes carry these experiences from childhood into our adult relationships. Now, for the monsters, could you give an example, because that might be a little confusing to understand, like, how does it even happen? I was a child back then. How does that reflect as I'm older? So what would be a good example of how our childhood experiences or trauma can actually reflect in our adult relationships?
Right, right. Very relevant question. And let me start by saying this. We form our imagos in our mind by the time we are 6 years old.
Hmm.
That is when we start forming our imagos. Imagos are imprints of what is loving, what is caring, what is safe, what is unsafe, what is happy, what is pleasurable, and all of that stuff.
Hmm.
So, from the time we are 6 years old, we are forming images in our minds that will prepare us for what we are looking for in our first crush, in our first boyfriend, our first girlfriend, our first date, our first, love, our husbands, our spouses, our wives. I mean, it's what attracts us to another, right?
Yeah.
And so the thing is, it states that we are attracted to only two things: what is familiar in our childhood, or what is totally different from childhood.
Wow.
Okay? So let's imagine that in our childhood, the message is for you to be loved, tumahimik ka, right?
Mm.
So for you to be loved, be quiet, keep yourself. We don't want to hear your thoughts,
Wow.
right? And so when you get into a relationship, you tend to be quiet, you tend not to share about yourself. Your partner doesn't know a lot about you, and that could make your partner feel unsafe. We're
Mhm.
supposed to be in a loving relationship, and yet I don't know a lot about you. So that's one example.
Mhm.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
let's imagine the opposite, that
Yeah.
as a child, your imago is wow, so much affection, hugs, kisses, holding one another, saying, I love you, I miss you, you're the best, you're special, you're awesome.
Mhm.
And then you meet someone who's a bit tight-lipped or very silent. And so that's unsafe for you. I
Mm.
don't know how you feel about me. Tell me more. And you can imagine that the dynamic is in the relationship might feel unsafe.
Yeah.
Now here's the catch, right? In the
Mhm.
romantic stage, remember I talked about the first stage
Mhm.
in a relationship, we all try to pretend that we are the person that you want us to be. Oh, you want me to be quiet? I can be quiet. Oh, you want me to be affectionate? I can be affectionate. So
Mhm.
during the romantic love stage, we now pretend to be the imago of the other person because we're trying to make them fall in love with us.
Mhm.
And then after they fall in love and they get to the disillusionment stage, ay, you're quiet pala.
Yeah.
Ay, you're not so affectionate pala. And then we are disappointed.
Mhm.
So either that is the time we sit down and do the work with each other and communicate our imago needs.
Yeah. And
And
so,
then,
go
yeah,
ahead.
go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, like, well, it's while these two, let's imagine like these two different people actually are in a relationship now, and they're already in the disillusionment stage. One who's tight-lipped pala, the other one who's actually very affectionate. It doesn't mean that the relationship won't work, right? It's like there
Exactly.
again, like what you mentioned, like you have to do the work. So how does that work look like, and how do you actually address it without sounding too, what's this, like criticizing of a person's behavior?
Yes, yeah, amazing. Yeah, that's right. So it doesn't mean the relationship will not work. It
Hmm.
just means you need to talk about it to make it work,
Yeah.
right? And so you need to sit down and do the work and make it right for both of you. And how are you going to do it? It might sound simplistic, but it starts with one statement. What I need from you in order to feel loved are the following, right? What I need from you to experience this relationship to be a little bit more loving is if you could start doing this and if you can stop doing this. So simple lang, right? But for the monsters who are listening, we must express our needs.
Yeah.
But the problem is, what if we learn from childhood your needs are not important?
Yeah.
Or um, you don't deserve your needs to be met.
Yeah.
Or masyadong maraming tao naghihirap sa buhay, your needs are not as important,
Oof.
right?
So true.
So a lot of messages like that, and that's why it's hard for people to communicate their needs because they think they're not important, they are undeserving, or they're not worthy. So you need to stretch out and try to really express your needs to make
Mhm.
the relationship work.
Yeah, it's really stepping out of your comfort zone. For me, when it comes to, just to share personally, when I try and express needs or try and set a boundary, it goes against my entire being. Like I freeze up, I choke up, I have cold sweats because I feel like you're because I'm already thinking of the outcome of like, what if they're going to say, oh my god, you're asking for too much, oh my god, it's like, why are you asking for these things? There's so many, like, it's so much easier said than done for many of us, for sure. So like, so thank you, Lissy, for sharing that. It is needed, it's hard, but then you like, that's what helps a relationship move forward, to address each other's needs so that both people can actually be happy, and we can kind of fill each other in that sense, to be more fulfilled.
Exactly, exactly. And how about this? I want to add to your list. When people ask for their needs, they also feel guilty.
Yeah.
They feel guilty for asking their needs when actually they deserve it. And
Mhm.
there is nothing wrong with having a need, right?
Yeah.
But the Filipino culture, we're really naturally giving. We are
Mhm.
naturally prioritizing other people. We're naturally sacrificing. And that is where the problem could start.
Mhm. Yeah, I totally agree with that. And also, when it comes to even with setting boundaries, right? It makes you feel guilty because it feels like initially the feeling is you're pushing that person away. When really setting the boundary is for them to kind of like understand the space that you're in, so that they don't kind of cross that line with you and make you feel unsafe.
Exactly. Boundaries are supposed to keep you safe. So,
Yeah.
boundaries of time, boundaries of information, boundaries of emotion, boundaries of your body, boundaries of your things, boundaries of your space. There's a
Yeah.
lot of different kinds of boundaries. And if we are going to be healthy adults, the boundaries are going to keep our relationship really safe.
Yeah. And so, monsters, I hope that we get started in one way or another to try and address our needs slowly, maybe not a lot at first, test it out until you're finally comfortable to lay it all out for your partner, for each
Yes.
other, for each other.
Yes, exactly, exactly. And later on, I'm sure that before we end our the show, we're going to talk a little bit about what will keep relationships safe.
Yeah.
And I hope that they would stay on in spite of the late hour for that information.
Yeah, because that's also very essential, because like um trying to learn to communicate and have that open and honest, vulnerable kind of communication with one another can really open doors for a relationship. Or so I've studied with all of my social media like content, with what I'm reading so far, with when it comes to relationships. So now I just want to get into the topic of attachment theory. So for you, attachment styles, what is your take on it, and how does it impact relationships?
Yeah. So actually, the Imago relationship therapy is based on the attachment theory, right?
Mhm.
That the dynamic of attachment that we learn in childhood is the kind of attachment that we will bring into our relationship.
Mhm.
So let's just use first simple terms, right? Some of our attachment styles can teach us to be distancers or pursuers, right?
Mm.
So if you think about a relationship like a rhythm of a dance, right? One is distancing and the other is pursuing, right? If you learned in your attachment to your parents, grandparents, other adults, teachers in your early young life to it's safer distance. If you are in trouble, magtago ka na, right?
Mhm.
Or if you are in trouble, go to your room, right? Or you will not gain anything if you don't pursue, right? So pursue parents, pursue love, pursue success, and so on. So if your attachment style is to distance, then your partner will experience you to be distant, withdrawn, closed off, not available.
Mhm.
If your attachment style is one that pursues, then your partner will be smothered and overwhelmed and in your face and just overwhelmed with your big presence, right? So
Mhm.
the attachment style that we had in childhood determines our attachment to our romantic partner,
Mm.
because our initial attachment styles teaches us these imagos on what is safe, what is unsafe in our relationships, right?
Mhm.
So, Nikki, you want to go over the attachment styles?
We can go a little bit over it. Because there's avoidant, there's anxious, and then there's secure. I mean, those are the three that I know of. There's also one more that's disorganized, but I don't know if we will tackle that too.
Yeah. I think the top three is really more familiar to
Yeah.
a lot of people. We can
Mhm.
say something, for each one, right? So uh, the secure, of course, would be the most ideal, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And this is the goal for your monsters, to try to be securely attached.
Yeah.
Um, but there's no one is perfect, and so some of us will have the elements of the other. Yeah,
Yeah.
elements of the other. So with secure attachments, um, there is really no reason to avoid, and there's really no reason to feel anxious. This
Mhm.
is the ideal kind of attachment because the person is trusting, the person is able to communicate, the person is able to regulate emotion. So, to
Mhm.
avoid such explosive big emotions, there is the ability to express needs, ask for needs. So, they're very secure with themselves, and therefore they can attach to another person, right?
Mhm.
While in anxious attachments, there is so the attachment style of being anxious. The tendency is there is a certain high level of anxiety and a low level of avoidance. So this person will be very clingy, very needy, very nervous, very anxious, and the cornerstone of anxiety is always paano kung may mangyari, or what if this and what if that.
Yeah.
So you need to be here with me, reassuring me, right? So the person who is attached in an anxious way is always thinking of the uncertainty, the unknown, the unexpected. So please reassure me. Please be there for me. Please be present for me. Samahan mo ko, be with me, and all of those things that
Mhm.
the other partner might feel burdened by it. Yeah.
Mhm.
Now, in the third attachment style, which is avoidant, right, there is high avoidance and very low anxiety. So, what happens here is that the person is what I described to be a distancer. They don't want to confront needs, they don't want to confront conflict, they just want to avoid. So,
Mhm.
this is like a turtle, or this is like a pagong, no, in Filipino, wherein you immediately go into your shell, you immediately go into your own world, your own space. There's no communication, there's no problem solving. So the partner is left confused. What's happening? What's going on?
Mhm.
And so these kinds of attachments can show up in our relationship, in the dynamic of the relationship. And so this is a very interesting statement about attachment.
Mhm.
We seek to complete the attachment that we didn't get in childhood with our romantic partners.
Hmm.
Okay. So, and another way of saying it is we seek to complete the unfinished business of childhood with our romantic partners. No? So, in Filipino, yung mga hindi natin nakuha sa ating kabataan or nung tayo ay bata, pagmamahal, atensyon, affection, gusto natin makuha sa ating mga partners, boyfriends, girlfriends, asawa.
Mhm.
And usually, this happens without our knowing.
Mhm.
So
Right.
unless we communicate about it, our relationship usually stuck because we don't know what's happening. We don't know about our imagos. We don't
Yeah.
know about childhood attachments. And so I hope this can bring light to this aspect of relationships with your listeners.
Yeah. I and thank you for breaking it down also for the monsters to know maybe have an idea with themselves and what attachment style they have. For me, I'm an anxious attacher. And it's very hard and scary to also ask for reassurance because once again that's like laying down your boundaries and setting your needs and giving so you can be better understood and cared for in the relationship. So I hope it's something that can be openly discussed with those who have relationships, those who are listening, and to just be curious about yourselves and each other, to
Yes.
so that you can better understand na, oh, okay, so that's why you're like this. I know what to do now. Diba? So
Right, right, right. So, later on, if we talk about, what are the ingredients of healthy relationship,
mhm.
my books talk about the 8 C's to sort of like securing your relationship. And I hope we can share this with the listeners.
Yeah, I was actually gonna get to that in a little bit, but
Yeah,
right before that question, um, regardless of what, like, even if it's a healthy relationship, conflict and hard conversations are a dime a dozen. Like, just because you solve one, there's gonna be another one, and it's gonna happen. What the point is, you actually talk through and try and find a resolution so that both parties have it addressed and that they're okay with it. And so, for those couples who might, or for those partners who have hesitation. Diba? A lot of us have a hesitation trying to start a difficult conversation, something that puts you in a vulnerable spot. Is there a method that you usually suggest to address a problem in a relationship to your partner?
right. And I think conflict is just a part of life.
Hmm.
We shouldn't be afraid of conflict because one of the first things we need to accept about each other is that we are different.
Right.
So if you have this romantic notion that we are one, we will always think the same way about things. We will always feel the same way about things. Give that up because that doesn't exist, right? And
Yes.
so I'd like to emphasize that you
Yeah.
are different, and therefore those differences will sometimes create conflict. But one of the important marriageability traits, if you are in that state of considering marriage, what you should be seeing now is the ability for your partner to communicate and the ability for your partner to problem solve.
Mm.
Without these two traits, it's already a red flag, right? So, what do I tell couples in talking about difficult situations, right? When you start your life as a couple, set a time for communication every week. So let's say it's Thursdays from 9 o'clock to 9:30 before you listen to Heard on Thursdays, right? Before you tune into this show,
I love it.
have your couple communication time. Set the time every week, even if you're not going to talk about anything. So just commit to this time to communicate. And if you Google communication starters, There are so many things to talk about. You can talk about your day, you can talk about food, you can talk about music. Just get into the habit of talking every week about something. And one day you're going to say, may I use this time to talk about something difficult? Are you available to listen?
Mm.
So set stage of safety.
Yeah.
And during this time, I will not use it as a dumping ground. I will use it to gain more understanding. So I would set the stage, right?
Mhm.
And then I will be mindful that I will not use it as a dumping ground. And therefore, I must speak from my world. I should not judge the world of the other. And I'm going to give your listeners a very easy formula. Yeah. I call this formula the I message. So please take down notes. Okay. When, and Nikki, actually, maybe I'm going to ask you to give an example of this
Sure.
so that our listeners can, yeah. So when you, I feel, because, and what I need from you. So, uh, four, four steps to start with, and then I'll add a five later on. But when you, I feel, because, and what I need from you. So four steps, and then I'll add the fifth. Nikki, want to give it a go?
Can it be a sort of, so I'm assuming because this is going to be a difficult conversation, it's going to be like sort of negative, but then not really
Yes.
attacking the other person. So when you, okay, I'm going to try and not tap into my personal experience.
How about you? When you don't call me the whole day, how about that?
Sure. When you don't call me the whole day, I feel
Feel,
neglected. I
because,
feel because uh, I don't know how, wait, it's like I don't know how you are, or I don't know, I can't check in on you and see how you are. And what I need from you is to call me up even just for 5 minutes. So just so I know what you're up to, without really know having to tell me what you're gonna do for the whole day. Just like just check in with each other. Does that make
and
sense?
then of course, yeah, and then of course the question is, would you be willing to do this for me? Yeah.
Would you be okay? Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Would you be willing to do this for me? And then, so that's the fifth.
Hmm.
And then let's add the sixth. Thank you. And what I always appreciate in you is. So we
Uh,
always end all dialogues with, yeah. So you want to try that, Nikki?
okay.
So would you be willing to do this? And let's imagine I'm your partner. And I might say, yes, I am. But other days, it will only be a text message and not a phone call.
Hmm.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
then you're going to say, thank you, and then give me an appreciation.
Thank you, and I love that you are so open to hearing me about my needs and being understanding with what I need from you.
Right. Right. There you go. How did that feel, Nikki? How did that feel?
My God, I feel so understood and heard and validated.
There you go. There you go. So let's go over it one more time. When you, I
When
feel,
I feel,
because,
because
and what I need from
what
you
I need
is,
from you is,
would you be willing to do this?
mhm,
And I appreciate you for.
yeah, monsters. That is the formula.
There you go. I encourage you to give it a try before you go to bed tonight. If you are listening in this show with your partner next to you, please give it a try and go to bed feeling understood, just like how Nikki described it to me.
Yeah, and and hopefully like your partner is also very open because that's what we all dream about. Because it's hard enough na nga to try and address a difficult conversation or a difficult topic. So I also hope that the partners are responsive
Right.
also.
But hey, guys, this is not easy. And,
Mhm.
you're going to be doing it for the first time. You will feel awkward. You will
Yeah.
feel dramatic. You're
Mhm.
going to feel like fake. You will feel so that it's so contrived, sobrang pilitan.
Yeah.
But give it a try. Trust the process. And believe me, it will work.
Yeah. And so hopefully this helps people address something that they've been meaning to address also in relationships. Just give it a try
Exactly.
and see what happens.
Exactly, exactly. And of course, Nikki, for your listeners not to forget that my whole book of Stay Connected is filled with a lot of conversation starters. It's good for one whole year and
Wow.
readable. So if they're really looking for a guide to keep the love going and talk about the difficult stuff, I hope they can pick up a copy.
Absolutely. And so now I do want to address, we've talked about like how we can address or start difficult conversations. Now, what, like you said, mentioned earlier, what are the 8 C's for having what's this? In sustaining or creating a healthy relationship.
Right, right, right. So the first one you mentioned already earlier. So I'm actually you mentioned two already earlier, and yeah, and the first C is called centered. Okay,
Mm.
you need to center yourself by knowing who you are and by knowing your needs, right? Centered, grounded, with a good, healthy self esteem and a good sense of self, right? So that's the first C. The second C is, you mentioned earlier, to be curious. What are you going to be curious about? You want to be curious about your partner. This
Mhm.
is one ingredient that is so powerful and it will affair proof your relationship. Why? With curiosity, what are you communicating? I want to know you. I want to hear you. I want to see you. And that is just so energizing when someone gets to know you, wants to get to know you. You feel so special.
Yeah.
So please have that attitude of curiosity. So center yourself, be
Hmm.
curious. And then the third one is to care. Daily caring behavior, right? Daily caring behavior. What is your love language? You need to understand what is the currency that really makes you feel loved, makes you feel cared for. So, is it words? Is it gifts? Is it cooking you a meal? Is it hugging you? Is it making sure you know where you are? I mean, there's so many ways to communicate care. And
Hmm.
so, co- know your caring love language and let your partner know, right?
Yeah.
And then now the fourth C is calendar, right? Calendar. Make
Hmm.
time for each other. You know, when couples tell me we're so busy, if you look at our calendar, we don't have time for each other. Guys, time can be created. And if you really value your gym time, your office, your meeting calls, your uh, skincare time, you can make time for your partner.
Mm.
So calendar everything. Calendar your communication, calendar your date nights, calendar your time for recreation, calendar your talks, calendar time for loving and intimate times, everything calendar, right? And that's why we have our smartphones. Make sure you're putting what your relationship needs in your calendar on your phone. Yeah.
Yeah.
So be
Yeah.
centered, stay curious about your partner,
Mhm.
Offer caring behavior. Don't ignore each other. Calendar the time with each other.
Yeah.
And then communication, which you've said over and over in the show. I love it. Communication is so essential. Yeah. And
Yeah.
so we must make sure that we calendar and communicate. Yeah.
Mhm.
The sixth one is an old-fashioned word that I really love to use, and that is to cherish each other. Okay, and to cherish each another is to really make the other feel so special. And guys, you can use your eyes to really make the other person feel so special. Try gazing, try gazing at your partner for only 1 full minute with gentle, loving eyes. Wow, you're communicating that you really cherish the other. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So
Sounds so
you
sweet.
can, sorry?
It sounds so sweet. Like, just gaze at them.
Yes,
Like,
gaze
yeah.
at each other, right? And then, yeah, so I'm just going to show you. In my book, I have this wheel of the
Mhm.
8 C's. And so I hope your readers can look it up and see how the 8 C's can really be strong in their relationship.
Yeah.
Nikki, how many have we mentioned?
6, I believe.
7. No?
Cherish was the sixth one, I think. So we're 7 and
Ah,
8
okay.
now.
So if you have the caring, the calendar, the communicate, and the cherish, for sure, no questions asked, you will feel connected, right?
I
So
see.
connected is the seventh. Connected ensures that you're not walking parallel in the street, you are connected with each other. Yeah. And the last one is, I think, what we all want, what we all are looking for, what will all determine a lifelong love that we can have for one another, and that is commitment.
Mhm.
Commitment is the promise that we will make an effort to keep the love alive by doing all these 8 ingredients regularly, constantly, daily, monthly, yearly, and so on. And
Yeah.
I think a healthy, loving relationship is an option for everyone.
I love that. And it's 8 C's, very easy to remember. So, monsters, if you guys are looking for a healthy relationship, make sure that you address these 8 C's so that, yeah, you can have a fulfilled, deeper, more intimate relationship with your partner. Now, it's really, oh gosh, it's so amazing that I'm talking to you because it's like I've always wanted to talk to like a relationship therapist, and you drop bombs left and right since we started talking.
Nikki,
So
I had a great time. I had a great time with this conversation, and I really enjoyed sharing all the information that you actually identified to be essential for your listeners. And I hope you get, a lot of sort of like, positive feedback on how your listeners are trying all these things out, especially the 8 C's.
yeah, for sure. And I will try and apply the 8 C's also in my life. And so to have that, to just have like a healthy relationship and keep trying to have a healthy relationship and not give up when you come to the disillusionment stage, right? That's just like
Yes.
that's
Yes,
the
make it
goal.
right. Yeah, make it right, make it work, guys. I mean, don't give up right away. Uh, you know, um, yeah, if you are in a relationship that you know is for you, keep it going.
Yeah. And so we didn't get into like the affairs part yet, but then we can do that for another episode because I feel like that's an entire topic on its own and we can address that
Yes,
at another time.
definitely,
Yeah.
definitely. Happy
Yeah.
to be back for that, and definitely, it is a separate topic. I think all that we've talked about today ties in nicely
Hmm.
each other. And so, yeah, let's at that.
I love that. Okay. And so very last thing for all of our listeners. What as a relationship therapist, as a psychologist, can you tell us what love means for you?
Yeah, wow. Okay, that is a very heavy question as we end the show. But I'm gonna keep it simple for your listeners because I think they will remember this. First of all, love is a feeling, but it is not only a feeling. Love is thought, and love is an action, but more importantly, love is a decision. Only because loving feelings, when they are not nurtured, can end. Because love as a feeling is fleeting. But when love is a decision, when your thoughts, feelings, and actions change, but you decided to love, you will find it back and you will recover it back. And so I encourage you to think about love as a decision to love daily by thinking loving thoughts, by feeling loving feelings, and by acting in loving ways. Love is a mutual affectionate bond that is nurtured by trust, care, communication, and a commitment to allow the other to grow in your loving presence. And I wish that everyone can find that kind of love and bond in their lifetime. And it is a wish that I could have, that once you find that loving relationship, guys, nurture it, take care of it so that it could last. So thank you, Nikki, for this virtual stage in which we can talk about love and relationships, and most especially relationship wellness. And please stay connected if you are in a relationship right now.
Wow, I can't think of a better ending than that. Like, you have just hit it right on the target, and it's a bullseye for an ending for an episode. And I have so much insight and learned so much from this show. So thank you so much, Lissy, for taking the time to speak with me with regard to relationship wellness, and also just how monsters can be better partners with in their relationships as well. So with that, we are ending this episode of Heard on Thursdays. Thank you again, Lissy, for gracing the show. And catch me again, Monsters, next Thursday for another guest. But I will definitely ask Lissy to come back. We'll talk about affairs next time.
Thank you, Nikki. I enjoyed myself, and all the best, everyone.
There we go. And with that, we'll go back to more music. Keep it locked right here on The Monster.
Monster exclusive interview. Monster exclusive interview. Only from Manila's hottest. Monster RX93.1.